Hello, my name is Alex. I'm a knitter coming to you from Vancouver, Canada, and today I've got a very exciting video. I want to talk about 5 interesting design elements that are featured or showcased in multiple patterns. I've got, as I just said, a 5. Before we get into it, I just want to give a little caveat. Hello. I just want to give a little caveat that I'm not trying to say that anyone has like duped anyone else. These are just patterns that have similarities, and some of them were even released at the same time, so who's to say who kind of like came up with the idea first. Even that I think is like a little bit funny, because we don't know anyone's, or I don't know any of the designers' processes and like how long those projects were in the works for, when those ideas were conceived of. So this isn't to try to say that anyone's copying anyone else. It's just to kind of compile them and notice them as trends and kind of compare and contrast, see where there are similarities and differences, and maybe help you choose which one you might like to make if you're interested in any of these specific trendier pieces. Before we get into it, I thought it was only fitting for me to wear a Petite knit design because she does feature pretty heavily in this video. So this is the Amy sweater. I knit this last December. This was actually kind of my like Christmas cast on. I casted this on December 23rd and I finished it on January 16th, so just under a month. And there are some details about this that are kind of similar to one of the categories, so I'll get into that momentarily. But just to go through, I used this really gorgeous Tweety Pure Gint. I think it is called Tutti Frutti, but the color number is 4615. I did actually start documenting the color numbers eventually last year, so I'm happy about that. And I knit the size 3. I knitted a little bit too cropped, but still very wearable. I really like the long 2x2 rib detailing with that little bit of rolled stockinette. It's a raglan construction knit from the top down, and this pink color just makes me really happy. I feel, I don't know, it just brightens my day. It brightens my face when I wear it. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to wear, and I'm happy to have it back in the rotation now that we're in those colder months. Okay, let's crack on. So the 5 trendy design elements that I'm going to be talking about are the diagonal button cardigan, a graphic line detail or piping, wide ribbed mock necks, high V-neck sweaters, and high neck striped raglans. I'm starting with the diagonal button cardigan because even before I had a YouTube channel, I was kind of clocking those designs and just, I don't know, storing them in my brain for later, of just like, that's interesting that they're all doing this very specific thing. So I thought it was maybe fitting to start with this. And just to say as well, I did create a bundle on Ravelry if you want to see all of these patterns together. So that'll be linked down below if you want to check this out. So let's start talking about those diagonal button cardigans. And the 4 sweaters that feature this design element are the Clematis sweater by Maier, the Valerie blouse by Petite, the Zela cardigan by Femiknit, and the diagonal cardigan by Tveito designs. I apologize, I don't know how to say that designer's name, so I'm not totally sure. And this one I actually found sort of just by chance. I couldn't remember the name of the Clematis sweater, so I was just typing in Ravelry diagonal cardigan, and diagonal cardigan was a design, so I included that in the bundle because like, well, this fits the criteria. So let's start off by talking about the Clematis sweater by Maier, also known as Hi Emma Knits on Ravelry. Was released in June 2023, and this is the oldest pattern that I'm going to be talking about. And again, not to say that like anyone copied anyone else. I just think it is kind of interesting and useful to let you know when the patterns were released. Okay, just a little side note, I did just buy this really cute mirror. It's actually a fabric, like this is what do you call that? push knitting. No, I'll have to look it up. I don't remember the term, but I just bought this mirror last weekend at a craft fair. So Gus I just put it up before I started filming. So Gus wants to sniff that mirror. So anyway, he'll just be hanging out. You know how it goes. You've seen these videos. The cats are around. So the Clematis sweater was released in June 2023. It is using a DK weight yarn, and the recommended needles are 4.5 millimeter and 3.5 millimeter. There are 8 sizes ranging from XS to 4XL. This design features a drop shoulder, and she also has 2 other versions using this design element of that diagonal button band, a chunky version of the Clematis sweater and a vest. So that is exhibit A of category number 1. Exhibit B is the Valerie blouse by Petite. This was released in September of 2025. Do you want to sit with me, buddy? She uses a sport weight yarn, and the recommended needles are 3.5 millimeters. There are 10 sizes ranging from XXS to 5XL, and this design features a raglan construction. And then the third one is the diagonal cardigan by Tveito Designs. Again, apologies if I'm not saying that correctly. This was released in October of 2025 and uses a bulky weight yarn on 5 millimeter needles. There are 5 sizes from extra small to XL. This cardigan is knitted from the bottom up. It also features a raglan construction, but obviously raglan decreases instead of raglan increases. The last pattern in this category is the Zela cardigan by Femiknit. Now, one thing was that I could not find this pattern on Ravelry. I guess maybe it doesn't exist there. I knew about this pattern because Natasha Crawford knit this one. And so I looked up her videos where she talks about it, and then I just found it online on the Femiknit's website. So there aren't as many details as I can find on like a Ravelry page. I don't know what the release date is, but I can tell you it uses worsted weight yarn. I think it's worsted weight. She uses 3 strands of mohair held together on a 5.5 millimeter needle. So maybe that would be more like bulky. There are 5 sizes total. So let's talk about the similarities between all 4 of these patterns. Some of them are gonna have similarities with some, but not with others. So for instance, I think I couldn't quite tell with the Zela cardigan what the construction was, but I believe it is a drop shoulder. So the drop shoulder is featured in the Clematis and the Zela, I believe. And then the Valerie blouse and the diagonal cardigan are using a raglan construction. However, like I said, the diagonal cardigan is knit bottom up. The raglan construction would be knit using decreases, whereas the Petite knit Valerie blouse would be using raglan increases since it's knit from the top down. Both the Valerie blouse and the Zela cardigan have more of like a boat neckline. And then all of these garments are pretty close fitting. So there's a range from negative ease to positive ease, with the diagonal cardigan having the most negative ease or most recommended negative ease. In the pattern, the diagonal cardigan has about 5 to 10 centimeters of negative ease. And then followed by that, the next one up is the Valerie blouse, which has 2 centimeters of negative ease. The Zela cardigan has a 1 to 3 centimeters of positive ease, and the Clematis sweater has about 5 centimeters of positive ease. So, but 5 centimeters of positive ease to 5 centimeters of negative ease is still relatively close fitting. Yeah, so those are 4 cardigans with the diagonal button band for you to consider if you want to make something like that. Okay. Category number 2, and this one I think is going to be talked about a lot because all of these patterns were just released. Of course, I'm talking about this graphic line detail or piping. All 3 of these sweaters are very different from each other. The thing that brings them together is that design element, that design detail. So for that reason, I've put them all together, even though so many other ways they're very, very different. But the three patterns that we're going to be talking about are the Linea sweater by Petite Knit, the Zoe Loop sweater by OtherLoops, and the Ava jacket by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So something that is interesting is all three of these patterns were released last month, November 2025. And two of the three are featured in the Isier Archives collection. So the Zoe Loop and the Ava jacket. And also Petite Knit has one in that collection as well, but it's not the Linea sweater. It is the Athene sweater or Athena sweater. And that also uses a very graphic line color work motif, but not graphic in the simple contrast stripe that I'm going to be talking about. So let's start with the Linea sweater. Like I said, it was released last month. She uses an Aran weight yarn and is recommending needle sizes 4mm, 3.5mm, and 3mm. There are 10 sizes ranging from XXS to 5XL. And this design is really simple, very oversized. It's a turtleneck design. So in a way, it's like kind of similar to this. Not really, it's just that this is another pink Petite Knit turtleneck. I think that the graphic stripe, the contrast stripe, really sings in this design because of its otherwise very simple features. It's very minimalist in aesthetic. Let's move on to the next one. The Zoe Loop sweater by OtherLoops was also released in November 2025. She used a worsted weight yarn and recommended needle sizes 4.5mm and 4mm. There are only 4 sizes total for this, so not a very great size range here, which I know has been a criticism of OtherLoops patterns in general. The other main difference for this is that it's an all-over textured sweater. So it's got a really interesting, almost like diamond motif throughout the whole thing, along with the graphic line or the piping. Okay, and then the next one, the Ava jacket by My Favorite Things Knitwear, released November 2025. She uses a bulky weight yarn and recommends needles 5.5mm, 5mm, and 4.5mm. There are 8 sizes for this one, ranging from extra small to 4XL. And this one has a really interesting, unique type of color work throughout a lot of the jacket. And obviously, unlike the other two, which are pullover sweaters, this is a jacket or a cardigan. So again, kind of a different category of sweater. But let's talk about their similarities. So obviously the contrast color stripe, specifically the line in the back, I think that's kind of one of the defining features of all of these designs. All of these designs are also drop shoulder from what I can tell. And there's a similar amount of positive ease for all of these patterns as well. So the Linea sweater has roughly 30 centimeters of positive ease. The Ava jacket has 35 to 40 centimeters of positive ease. And the Zoe Loop sweater has 35 to 45 centimeters of positive ease, but there is gradually less positive ease in the larger sizes. But again, the size range here is pretty limited, only 1 to 4. So I'm guessing perhaps there's about 45 centimeters positive ease for the smaller sizes and closer to 35 centimeters of positive ease for the larger sizes. I'm not 100% sure on that. But again, like I said before, the Zoe Loop and the Ava jacket are both part of the Isier collection. So they're both inspired by Marianne Isier's designs from the 1980s and 90s. And I'm guessing that maybe Petite Knit, since she was also part of that collection for the Athena sweater, was perhaps also looking at a lot of Isier designs, and that piping maybe stuck with her. Maybe that was part of the inspiration as well. I'm not totally sure. I think that another interesting similarity between them all is that inspiration of the 80s and 90s. There is kind of like a 90s, I would say, I'm tempted to say minimalism. Like the design in and of themselves, the silhouettes are very large, but aside from that graphic line, they're in some ways understated. That feels a little bit contradictory to say, since the Zoe Loop does have texture all over and the Ava jacket has that really interesting color work. But I think because of the colors that they used in those two sweaters being very neutral, kind of beige, there is still that sort of minimalist aesthetic, especially with that slightly more relaxed, oversized silhouette. It really lets those design elements sing and be showcased in casual yet eye-catching type of way. So I really like all three of these patterns. I think that they do all have enough differences that you could potentially want to make all three. I think that graphic line is such a feature of the three of them that maybe I don't know that I would be drawn to having all three in my wardrobe, because it is kind of this specific and eye-catching element. I would be inclined to go for potentially the Linea sweater. I'm here for a pink turtleneck, as we know. But I do also really like the Ava jacket, and I'm quite intrigued by how she did that interesting kind of color work motif. All right, this next category features 3 patterns that were also released last month, November 2025, and this is a wide ribbed mock neck sweater. The patterns that I'm going to be talking about are the P1 sweater by Susanne Muller, sweater number 33 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and the Air sweater by Ozetta. So the P1 sweater is using a worsted weight yarn and 4.5 millimeter needles. There are 9 sizes, and this is a raglan construction. Sweater number 33 is using an Aran weight yarn and 5 millimeter and 4 millimeter needles. There are 8 sizes ranging from extra small to 4XL, and this is also using a raglan construction. And the Air sweater by Ozetta is using a bulky weight yarn and recommends needle sizes 5, 4.5, and 4 millimeter needles. There are 9 sweaters for this one, ranging from extra small to 5XL. This sweater features a saddle shoulder / drop shoulder design, I believe. So let's talk about the similarities between all of these. There are varying amounts of positive ease within these 3 sweaters, with the P1 sweater having the least amount of positive ease at only 10 to 20 centimeters, followed by the sweater number 33, which recommends having about 25 to 30 centimeters of positive ease. 25 to 30 centimeters of positive ease for sizes extra small to large. And then from sizes extra large to 4XL, there is 20 to 25 centimeters of positive ease. So less positive ease as the sizes go up. And then the Air sweater has recommended positive ease of 26.5 to 28 centimeters. And again, this is for the smaller sizes, and then less positive ease as the sizes go up as well. The P1 and the Air sweater have rolled stockinette edges along the ribbing. And this is where I wanted to actually, I didn't even think about this before I started talking about the Amy sweater, but the Amy sweater could potentially be in this category as well. It's not a mock neck. One of the features of the Air sweater and the P1 sweater is the wide rib along the raglan seam. So this doesn't have that, but the other 2 do, and I think that's what kind of caught my eye and made me clock that those 2 were so similar, was that raglan detail. But where they do have some similarities is that wide ribbing with the stockinette rolled edge. Could be a similarity, and the fact that this is kind of wider ribbing. However, all 3 of these wide ribbed mock neck sweaters have wider ribbing than just 2x2. I think that the sweater number 33 might be like 5x2 or 5x1. I'm not totally sure. It was hard for me. I should zoom in and maybe try to count the stitches, but it's not just a 2x2 rib. It's a different number of knit stitches to purl stitches, but they are the wide rib is really the feature of all 3 of these sweaters. Okay, next category is a high v-neck sweater. I only have 2 patterns for this, and they were both released again last month, November 2025. It is the Hannah sweater v-neck by Petite and the high v loop sweater by OtherLoops. So for the Hannah sweater v-neck, she used a worsted weight yarn and recommends needle sizes 4mm and 3mm. There are 10 sizes from XXS to 5XL, and this features 2x2 ribbing details, very thick V-neck ribbing as well. This recommends having about 35 centimeters of positive ease, so another larger oversized garment. For the high V-loop sweater by OtherLoops, she used also a worsted weight yarn and also use 4mm needles for the body and then 3.5mm needles for the ribbing. This one has 6 sizes from extra small to extra large. And this one features 1x1 ribbing detail. But again, those ribs are very, very wide. Even longer V-neck detail on the high V-loop sweater. And this one has about 25 centimeters of positive ease. And again, like the other OtherLoops patterns, has gradually less positive ease for those larger sizes. But yeah, the similarities, they are both a drop shoulder design. They are both worsted weight patterns. They use the same needle size. And the feature here obviously is that high V-neck coming up high on the neck and having that really chunky section of ribbing for the V-neck, but then also for the sleeves and the hem. All right, this brings us to our last category for trendy design elements. And these ones, the patterns are again like more varied. They have similarities, but they don't necessarily look as similar as some of the other patterns in the other categories. This category is a rolled neck striped raglan sweater. And the sweater that I'm gonna start off with for this one is sweater number 32 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. This pattern was released in April of 2025. She used a DK weight gauge and 4mm or 3.5mm needles. And there is an equal amount of meterage needed for both colors. The stripes are even. There are 8 sizes ranging from extra small to 4XL and 7 to 9 centimeters of positive ease, so relatively close fitting. And it features a very narrow raglan line, which is really interesting. I think that's kind of the defining feature of this sweater, and that is not present in the other two. So that's unique to sweater number 32. The second design in this category is the Frankie sweater by Petite. Again, like I said, Petite is heavily featured in this video. And this sweater was released in October of 2025. It is also using a DK weight gauge and also uses 4mm and 3.5mm needles. The stripes in this sweater are thinner. You need double the amount of the main color as you need for the stripe. So for example, for the third size, you would need 400 grams of the main color and 200 grams of the contrast color. There are 10 sizes ranging from extra small to 5XL. I think like that's pretty standard for all of Petite knit sweaters, at least for the ones that I listed today. And there is a recommended 20 centimeters of positive ease, so a little bit more oversized than the sweater number 32. And the last sweater in this category is the Normandy sweater by Cheryl Mokhtari. This pattern was released in April 2025, so both sweater number 32 and the Normandy sweater were released in April of this past year. This one is using a worsted weight gauge and uses 4.5mm needles and 4mm needles. There are 11 sizes, and the key difference with this sweater, well, there's actually 2 key differences. The first is that this pattern uses a broken rib stitch pattern, whereas the other 2 were both stockinette. And this one also features a wide folded over collar and solid color cuffs and hems. This one has the most positive ease. It has 25 centimeters of positive ease. So the Normandy sweater, like I said, is more different to the other 2 visually, I think, but it still has some of those similarities. So what are those similarities? They're all top-down raglan constructions. They all have very similar weights and gauges, like DK to worsted is pretty close. Sweater number 32 and the Normandy sweater both have even stripes, whereas the Frankie sweater has a thin stripe and then a larger section of the main color. The one thing is that with the Normandy sweater and the Frankie sweater, they both do kind of have a main color, since that Normandy sweater has the solid cuff and solid hem. The other similarity here between the Normandy and the Frankie sweater is that the stripes are thin. So we've got kind of like a little continuum. Sweater number 32 and the Normandy sweater have equal stripes. They're equal sizes. So the Normandy sweater and the Frankie sweater have thin stripes, but not equal. So I guess that kind of wraps up that category and wraps up this video in totality. So yeah, I hope that this was an interesting video to watch. Maybe this gave you something to think about if these are kind of design elements that you're thinking about maybe incorporating into your, if you do a make 9 or just like a make wish list for 2026. And with that, I will say goodbye. Gus has been keeping me company this video, so goodbye from him too. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend if you're watching this on the Friday that this is released. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.